Welcome back into A to Z here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On ATL. I'm at Mark Zinno, MarkZinno. Free on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast, search Locked On Sports Atlanta. And if you're watching on YouTube, I have these funky headphones on because my dog ate my old earbuds last night. So I'm stuck with these big things. And yes, we're doing Sleeveless Radio today, hashtag Sleeveless Radio, because I can. I'm in my basement. And if you know me and have listened to A to Z, you know sleeves are optional, always. What is not optional is for the Falcons to mess up this draft. They have to get it right. And joining us now from ESPN, ESPN.com, and host of From the Perch podcast, it's Mike Rothstein joining us here on A to Z. Mike, welcome, buddy, and great to have you here.
Thanks. And I'm going to be honest, I think the dog ate your headphones is like the dog ate your homework from.
No, genuinely it did. The dog.
I'm sure that happened.
I want to wear these things.
I will tell the teacher that.
They look ridiculous. I mean, I'm not Scott Van Pelt. He's much better at these big headphone things than I am. But this is what I am left to, my own devices, and this is what happens. All right. Falcons have a huge draft coming up. And I guess the question is, if you had to handicap which direction they were going to go at 8, give me a player, or is it a trade, or how do you see it going down?
It's a tough question. And I sigh and I kind of sound exasperated because this is a team that literally needs everything except for a kicker. Not that you're taking a kicker in round 1 anyway.
You should know better to bring up kickers with me, by the way.
Yes, I know this, but they're not. They have one in Younghoe Koo that they signed for a very long time at a reasonable deal. So you can go any other position and it would not shock me. I think if they drafted a running back would be a surprise and I'd wonder why. But any of those positions that are out there, we're talking quarterback, we're talking wide receiver, we're talking offensive line, defensive line, edge rusher, corner, safety. Any of those would make sense. To me, the names that might make the most sense if they are there is if you're looking from a pure talent perspective, if like a Kayvon Thibodeau or Kyle Hamilton fell to the Falcons at 8, I think it would make a lot of sense if you're looking at best player available based on talent. If you're looking at quarterbacks, I think they have to absolutely 100% believe that that is their guy in terms of that's their guy for their franchise for the next 10 to 12 years for them to take, say, a Malik Willis or a Kenny Pickett. That's where that would stand. Everything else, I think if it's there, I think you take it. I think if the offensive line is the best player available, you go that direction. If the edge rusher is the best player available, you go that direction. If Sauce Gardner is sitting there, that's really intriguing to me if Sauce Gardner is sitting there, because all of a sudden then you can also, and this is going to be blasphemous, but you can sit Sauce for a year because you have Casey Hayward, and that you can let the sauce simmer. We're going to use this analogy here.
Oh, you're going there.
I'm cringing all the way as I say this. But then in 2023 or midway through 2022, you can work him in a little bit more. And because corner is the hardest position to transition to in the NFL other than quarterback. It just is.
Let's play a game here for a second.
Okay.
As you just mentioned about quarterback, I'm a proponent of them doing it, and I am okay with them doing it. Regardless of what people say about this draft class of quarterbacks and who they are and everything else, I've said repeatedly, I don't mind GMs who are aggressive. I don't mind GMs who take big risks and big swings. I'm totally okay with it. That said, okay, put your Arthur Smith, Terry Fontenot hat on for a minute. You're at the post-draft press conference, and you don't draft a quarterback. And I, the reporter, Mark Zinno, turn around and say to you, hey, coach, hey, GM, I got a question here. You didn't draft a quarterback. I know you say you're not in a rebuild, but you don't have a long-term solution at that position yet. What is the reasoning in not going to find them in this draft? Your answer would be what?
Well, Mark, my answer would be this. We looked at all of the quarterbacks. As you know, we were at every pro day for every quarterback. We did a lot of research on them. And the way the board fell, we did not feel like a quarterback was the position that we needed to take at that point. We're going to go and sign another veteran to compete with Marcus Mariota or to back up Marcus Mariota. And listen, Marcus Mariota used to be a first-round pick. He was number 2 overall pick. So he has talent. And we all know that. And he's been a starter in this league before. And we think that he has a chance to be that again. And we're going to see that through. And listen, this doesn't mean that Marcus Mariota is our quarterback for the next 15 years. It means Marcus Mariota is our quarterback for 2022. And we'll see what happens in 2023.
Fair answer. I mean, you're being non-committal, and look, I think that's the only appropriate answer you can give. Sure, somebody like me could push back and be like, "Well, when do you plan on addressing quarterback?" And I mean, obviously, if you're trying to rebuild this franchise, you have to find somebody who gives you the stability of Matt Ryan. That's not Marcus Mariota, so you're constantly going to be in a state of transition. That's just my biggest issue with the whole thing when it comes to taking a quarterback. It's just generally, again, that you have to figure out a way to stabilize that position first when you're doing a rebuild, despite the fact that the Falcons tell you they're not in a rebuild.
Right. But, and I don't disagree with you that they do have to obviously solve their quarterback issue, but I don't think quarterback is I don't think that's the only way to do this. And I've said this on my podcast. I've said this for really since I took over this beat, because it was the same conversation last year with drafting a quarterback. And my argument on it is this. Now, it's a little bit different situation because that quarterback could be a starter this year, where last year that was clearly not going to happen. But you can do this another way. You can look at, and it kind of happened accidentally, but Tampa Bay and Indianapolis, I think, and really even the Rams, created this mold of how to build a team beyond getting the quarterback first. And that is getting every other position, locking in your high-profile free agents, which the Falcons are going to have a lot of money next year, and drafting well at other positions. And then you can put the quarterback in later, whether that is a rookie or whether that is a veteran, because that's the thing that's happening now more and more in the NFL that wasn't happening 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, is more quarterbacks are wanting to leave their teams later on in their careers. We're talking Russell Wilson, we're talking Phillip Rivers, we're talking Matt Ryan, we're talking Matthew Stafford, Tom Brady. All of these guys, for Peyton Manning, for one reason or another, did not play their entire careers with their one team that drafted them, like Ben Roethlisberger and Eli Manning did. So all of a sudden you're seeing where you can get a veteran option later who has experience, and you can put him into that team full of young talent. And that's another way to build a roster. Yes, you are taking a chance there. You are. But if you build a competitive roster and an attractive roster, a quarterback will want to come here that's a veteran quarterback.
I don't disagree.
Now, where if you're drafting the quarterback first, you're going to that's a tough go for a wide receiver, for a running back, where unless you know that guy's really good, you're not necessarily going to want to come here. Where if you do it the opposite way, the quarterback will want to come here, or you can go draft the guy.
Well, I would just counter with the three examples that you gave. All three of those spots had a first-round quarterback in the position to provide stability. It was Andrew Luck in Indianapolis, and I know he retired. They had that bridge year with Jacoby Brissett, so that's a little bit different. But Jameis Winston was drafted by Tampa, and Jared Goff was drafted by the Rams. They were committed to those guys for several years before they made it moving off of them and made a vacancy for somebody else. So
but that's the thing. But they weren't good when they drafted the quarterback first.
No, okay, but right. So they weren't. The Falcons aren't going to be good. Draft the quarterback first, and like you said, you have said to me in other conversations, commit to him for 3 or 4 years. But the big problem is that, again, that extends your sort of rebuild, so to speak, right? Like they weren't competitive. Well, the Rams were there. I think the Colts were too, because again, you found high level guys that you drafted all three of those guys. I think Luck was one, and the other two guys were drafted second overall, right? Or Jameis was first. Jameis was first. Yeah. So I mean, you're talking about number 1, number 2 picks in the draft, and again, we don't have to kind of go. I get your point. We don't have to go back and try to compare the two. Let's do this. I'm going to give you a position. Tell me the pro and the con to taking that position, regardless of who the individual is.
Okay.
A tackle.
The pro to taking a tackle is you need to protect whoever the quarterback is, whether it's Marcus Mariota or whoever else. And you were unable to do that the last 4 years. Yes, you drafted Caleb McGarry, and you would hope that he could be your right tackle. That has not proven to be the case. So you need to upgrade that position. You have the left tackle spot, and I know how you feel about him, Mark, but you have the left tackle spot.
I feel good about Jake. No, I like Jake.
But
I like Jake. Jake is a very good, consistent left tackle.
Right. But you need another one. You need a right tackle to be there, to be at a higher level than what Caleb McGarry has so far given you. Maybe Caleb McGarry can play at a higher level. We will see. But you need to bring in competition for him. The con of taking the tackle there is, honestly, I don't know of a con of taking the tackle there.
Well, you could argue that there are bigger needs elsewhere, right?
Yeah, you can argue that. But also, when you look at the offense, I don't know from a pure positional player needing guys, you can argue there are. But from an importance factor, especially if you want to run the ball, I don't know if you can argue that there's like many bigger needs, especially on offense, that than right tackles or tackles. So I think you can, I don't know if there's a real downside to that as long as you're taking the right guy.
Right. And I would, Falcons fans aren't going to be happy with the unsexiness of it, but good organizations don't mind being unsexy when it comes to drafting good offensive linemen.
Correct.
When it comes to pass rusher or defensive end, pro and con.
Yeah, the edge rusher situation, I think.
We know the pro.
Right. The pro of, you need them.
Right.
Right now, Lorenzo Carter is your number one pass rusher, and Ade Ogundeji is probably your number two pass rusher. And but
not good.
What?
It's not good.
No, not good, Bob. Not good. But you need an edge rusher. Now, the pro is you need that badly. It's been a problem for you for years. You were the worst team in the league last year getting quarterbacks. Even if that quarterback doesn't get sacks, or even if the edge rusher doesn't get sacks, you need someone to get consistent pressure, which they weren't able to get last year. So you need that guy. The con, of course, here is that, and not a lot of people are talking about it, other than Aiden Hutchinson, there are questions about all of the top edge rushers. In that there are questions about Kayvon Thibodeau and kind of whether he'll take plays off. I don't necessarily buy that. I think he's
they said Aaron Donald took plays off in college too. So
I think that's an unfounded thing. And Trayvon Walker, I think Trayvon Walker's a heck of a player, but Trayvon Walker had 9.5 sacks in college.
Right.
And I would be worried about that production investing at 8. Now, again, it was how he was being used, and you can say the same thing about Jordan Davis, who you're not bringing up. But Jordan Davis is another guy at 8 that if they took Jordan Davis, I'd be like, sure, yes, that makes a lot of sense to me. But to me, edge rusher, that would be the concern with the guys that you're sitting there. Also at 8, there are very good edge rushers that can be found in the second and third rounds of this draft. Whether we're talking about Cameron Thomas from San Diego State, whether we're talking about Drake Jackson from USC, whether we're talking about Kingsley Enagbare from South Carolina, or Arnold Ebiketie from Penn State. And I don't know if I got the last name right. But the rest of them I know I did. Those are guys that can be had on day 2 of the draft that can be very productive for you right from the jump. So you have to look at the depth of it, and that would be my concern with edge at 8.
Right. And again, I would phrase it similarly, but a little bit different. Just say, because there are so many in this draft, I think as much as the hit rate is higher, the miss rate is higher because they're all not going to be great, right?
Correct.
I mean, that's when it comes to the first round. There's going to be 2 or 3 DNs drafted in this first round. They're just going to be busts. They're just not going to be able to play at the level that we think they are. And I'll never forget, and it was when Rex Ryan was with the Jets, and they took Vernon Golson, right? Was that who they took? They took a passer, a D end at 4. And I remember talking to somebody who was a media member in New York who Rex Ryan told them, they knew from the first week of camp, this dude can't play. Whatever they saw on the tape, whatever they saw through OTAs, by the time they put bodies up against him, they're like, this dude can't play. And they knew it from the jump. There's going to be guys like that. It just happens.
There are every year. Every year there are guys like that.
So that's, I think that's a little bit of the danger in going DN. The other position I'm really for is then taking a corner. It's like starting pitching. You just can't have enough good corners.
Right. And so pro and con on that. Pro, if it's Sauce Gardner, like we were talking about before, or I think even Derek Stingley, listen, Kyle Hamilton's a safety, not a corner, right? So I want to expand. I'm going to expand this out to defensive back for the purposes of being able to add Kyle Hamilton into this, because I think Kyle Hamilton might be the safest player in the draft. Truthfully, I really think he might be the safest player you can take. In terms of the floor is so high, kind of like Kyle Pitts last year. So I think the pro there is that you need that position. That position is incredibly important, and the talent of those 3 guys, particularly Sauce and Kyle Hamilton, is extremely high. The con here is corner right now might be on the current roster the most comfortable position you have with AJ Terrell and Casey Hayward. Casey Hayward's 32, so he's not your long-term solution, but he's maybe your solution for 2 years. Also, corner is a hard position to transition to. It's, other than quarterback, the hardest position to transition to from college to the NFL. And great corners in the NFL have struggled as rookies. Stephon Gilmore, Darius Slay, some of the best corners that are out there have struggled as rookies, and you run the risk of maybe stunting their development if you put them out there in bad situations. So that, to me, and whoever that rookie corner is going to get a lot of work because people aren't going to really throw at AJ Terrell. So to me, that is the con of taking a corner if you really want him to play right away. Obviously, that's not a con for Kyle Hamilton. The con for Kyle Hamilton would be you have to feel pretty decent about what you have at safety already with Jalen Hawkins and Richie Grant, or you're ready to move on. If you draft Kyle Hamilton, to me, that's a sign that maybe you really don't feel that great about Richie Grant, although also Dean Pease loves the safeties.
Yeah. Well, look, it's going to be very, very interesting, and I'm sure we're going to dissect it ad infinitum, as Brian Billick once told me, over the course of the next week plus. He is Mike Rothstein, host of From the Perch podcast. Check out all the work on ESPN and ESPN.com. Thanks for the time as always, brother. Appreciate it. Stay well, and we'll look forward to the draft.
Absolutely. It's going to be an interesting one. I think the Falcons are the most interesting team, actually, because like we were talking about, they literally need everything but a kicker.
Everything. Right. He is Mike Rothstein. All right, Mike, thanks. Take care, brother. All right, we are going to wrap things up next here on A to Z. Stay with us. It is A to Z on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Search us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, Locked On Sports Atlanta.